So Gordon, that was very informative about the actual area that we're at, and a little bit of the history about what kind of management that Mr. Carter had been following here on the farm. And that's a crucial portion of the actual assessment that we would be doing as well, because we have a management history or interview with that producer. So that gives us an opportunity to find out more specific details that we could then use to consider while we're actually completing the assessment out in the field in the different managements. And we can take a little bit of time just because you have an in-depth knowledge because you've already completed an interview with this producer. But the questions that we'll look through is, what is the specific crop rotation of the field that we'll be looking at?
So corn, followed by soybeans, and then in between the corn and the soybeans, he'll do usually a 6 to 8 way mix, cover crop mix. And he has experimented with cotton in the past as well. I think he only did 1 year of cotton.
Okay.
And then most recently he has adopted wheat into his rotation as well to kind of give him some cash flow in the off season.
Okay. Also, in talking with that producer, does he have any tillage in his system?
Absolutely not, if he can avoid it. He does do strip till with his planter, but I would consider it be more like a in-row subsoiler, or we call it a no-till subsoiler type. Very little disturbance, maybe only 1 inch, just the width of the subsoil and shank.
Okay.
So, but full width tillage, by and large, he doesn't practice that and hasn't for most of the years that he's been farming. Recently, got a turbo till, and I know that sometimes can be a considered tillage tool, which it is, but he uses it only to maybe fix some ruts, or he's used it before too to terminate some summer cover and plant some fall cover behind that. So okay. It's not really a full inversion or moldboard plow type.
It would be used in specific areas within a field. It's not used across the broad field.
That's correct.
As a complete operation. I think that's important that we kind of identify those types of things, because a producer may be calling one tool something, and then we would need to assess as planners what the actual effects of that piece of equipment may do. A lot of different pieces of equipment are named specific things that may think that it's conservation tillage or no-till or so on and so forth. So it's very important that we kind of get that information from the producer in that interview. Okay, moving along on this actual interview process, how long have you been in this management system, and are you considering any changes?
I'd say he's been in the management system currently with the cover crops for 8 years or more. And then as far as changes go, I would say if anything, he may just switch crops, like he may drop the soybeans in a given year with cash prices and that type of thing. And then he has picked up the wheat recently. So other than just maybe changing the species of cover crop or adding a cash crop depending on the value at the time of the markets. But by and large, the management of the farm will stay the same with the multi-species cover in between your cash crops.
Okay.
And he has experimented and still does plant some summer cover behind corn. If he gets his corn out early, he'll go in and stick a summer cover crop in there. So he keeps the ground covered all the time.
Okay, that actually leads right into my next question. For how many months per year is the soil surface at least 75% covered with plants, residue, or mulch?
Every month.
Every month?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and just
months.
looking around, maybe I'll answer this, but is any part of this operation or any of the cropland grazed?
No, not currently.
Are cover crops a consistent part of the cropping system? If yes, for how many years has the field been continually cover cropped?
About 8+ years.
8+ years. So another question that we would ask, since cover crops are a big part of this management system, would be, how are these cover crops terminated?
In the past, it's used a roller crimper, but all the time it's followed with a chemical kill.
Okay. So a combination of methods, roller crimper, herbicide. Okay. Continuing on for the producer interview, what integrated pest management strategies are used? Crop scouting, selective spraying, treated seeds?
Okay, so he does do scouting, pretty intensive scouting, in fact. He uses a consultant sometimes, but he also goes behind the consultant he pushes his thresholds a little bit just to try to avoid spraying if he can, so that would be one. So scouting, and then also he's used some pollinator strips around the edge of the field in the past. And he has experimented with non-treated seed. And then also he's reducing his pesticide with regards to in the soybean crop, trying not to spray for worms unless you really have to, that type of thing. So trying to reduce the amount of pesticide that goes, or insecticide, I should say, that goes out. He also most recently has tried to move away from glyphosate to terminate with.
Okay. Just building on that, we talked a little bit about pest management. What about nutrient management strategies are used on the farm?
She's done some grid sampling in the past, and then also zone management, and then tissue sampling. The farm does have a history of manure, so he obviously samples his manure and usually puts 1 ton out on most of his land. In the past he's done 2 tons, but he's watching his phosphorus levels and making sure that he doesn't put out too much litter or phosphorus.
Okay. Is there any application of any fertility, either banded or split application?
With regards to banding or fertilizer management, he does do split application of nitrogen, and then also he does some, he'll put some nitrogen down shortly after planting, and then he'll go back with his pivot for fertigation with the nitrogen. So that's I guess a split application as well, but he uses the pivot when he can to put that out.
So,
and he has used some slow release nitrogen as well.
Okay.
To help with nitrogen loss.
Okay. So you talked a little bit about fertigation, so that would usually be put out, of course, with some type of irrigation system. Is the field that we will be looking at to complete the assessment, is it also irrigated?
No, it's dry land.
Okay. So while that field is a dry land field, has it ever been noticed that water ponds or runs off during or immediately after typical rainfall events?
In 2015, we had 24 inches of rain in 24 hours, and so he obviously had some runoff then. But by and large, there's a bottom in this field that does get some catch some runoff, but that's only in a very heavy rain event. But we won't be. Where we'll be doing the assessment today is not in a bottom or a pond.
Okay.
But that's very typical of Southeast to have either Carolina bays or other depressions that catch, rainwater when we have heavy rainfall events. But the water doesn't stay there very long, so that would be a plus, I guess, maybe.
Has the producer made mention of any problems with crop emergence or early crop growth? And if he did, was there specific areas within the field that he indicated that was at?
By and large, I don't think he's had any emergence issues. He has precision planting equipment, and also he does a good job of, checking, calibrating his planter. So, but not any insect problems or anything like that to speak of.
I can speak that from personal experience, the past couple springs have been really wet. Has this producer, in terms of water management being a concern, has he mentioned that it's been too wet in the spring when it's time to plant cash crops?
He uses the cover crop to manage that, so if it looks like it's going to be a wet spring, he'll leave the cover crop growing, kind of like we see here. And so he'll go and plant his crop green, or he'll terminate it right at planting. So If it's going to be a dry spring, by contrast, or he's planting a later crop, he'll go ahead and terminate the cover crop. But for the most part, he doesn't have any trouble getting in the field, and the tractor can stand up, very little ruts, you know, except maybe at harvest time if it's real wet.
So he's kept his management pretty open and pretty flexible to be able to accommodate or work with the conditions that he has in the field.
Correct.
In closing on this actual interview, we have the opportunity to list any other observations not captured by the assessment or interview questions, including plant condition or recent weather and landscape characteristics that may affect the assessment results. So I would kind of lean back to, you said you mentioned there was a flood in 2015. Is there any kind of environmental or weather factors that have happened here recently that we should think about?
He did notice after that flood there was some compaction. I think that was primarily from rain, just a lot of heavy rainfall, and in the areas that's ponded, that water sat there for weeks before it went away. So that weight of the water, he did mention that was a concern, but other than that, I haven't really noticed, or he hadn't noticed any issues.
Okay. So Gordon, now that we have completed the management history interview with that producer's data and his information about his specific to his management, we'll actually take this and use this in completion of the management or the infield cropland assessment on this field. Once we complete that, then we can actually complete the assessment again on a different management to see how it compares.